With that, this morning we welcome Secretary Chow to testify on the fiscal year 2018 budget for the Department of Transportation. I look forward to working with you to maintain and improve the safety of our transportation system, all the while ensuring that our infrastructure investments lead to economic growth and really to improve the day-to-day lives of the American people, which is really what we're talking about. The budget request for the Department of Transportation is $16.3 billion in discretionary budget authority and a total of $75 billion in total revenue resources, including obligation limitations for surface transportation and aviation programs. Now, safety is this committee's top priority for DOT. I'm pleased that the budget request places priority on safety programs, Madam Secretary, funding several programs consistent with the FAST Act and continuing many of the safety priorities in the previous 17 bill. So I think that's frankly very good news. In addition to focusing on safety of our transportation network, we obviously must ensure that we grow our economy. And yes, through fiscally responsible transportation investments. And in doing so, we must make sure that we don't leave rural America and economically distressed areas behind. I look forward to a spirited discussion about the administration's proposal to transfer air traffic control operations and facilities to a corporate, non-governmental entity. We're dealing with a monopoly, whether it's the monopoly controlled by the government or a monopoly controlled by somebody else. It will still be a monopoly. I've not been shy of saying that I believe that we should maintain air traffic control system that is accountable to the public. It's owned by the public, and it should be accountable to the public. And I don't see any other way to achieve this than to continue our congressional oversight role. And I believe that preserving the public's voice, frankly, is the only way to maintain our airspace as a national asset and protect access to all users, commercial aviation, general aviation. And this is key. New entrants, such as drones and commercial space operators, that frankly, in many cases, we don't even know what they are, but we know that it's going to happen now. It's starting to happen now. So we must, to the maximum extent possible, protect the right of the traveling public as well. It's not a secret. Our airspace is the most complex in the world, with an unmatched safety record. We can work together to build on that safety record, and I look forward to it, and open the airspace to more and more users. Let's make sure that we're not limiting it, but that we open it to more and more users as technology changes, some of which are beyond our current imagination, but that are starting to happen right now. So, Madam Secretary, just know that I look forward to discussing this issue with you today and for not only today, but continuing those conversations in the weeks and the months ahead.
Madam Secretary, you've stated on several occasions that safety must remain a top priority of the department, yet the budget request would cut funding in several critical safety accounts. I'll just quickly tick them off. The operations and research account at NHTSA, the safety and operations account at the Federal Railroad Administration, the pipeline safety account at the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and aviation safety activities within the FAA's operations accounts. I'm puzzled by these cuts. I hope they don't represent a lack of commitment to key safety functions. We need to know how the department plans to maintain safety with fewer resources at its disposal. Quickly, briefly, I want to shift gears and address air traffic control. The administration has endorsed the outlines of Chairman Schuster's privatization proposal. Have grave concerns about this. I've said that repeatedly. This would sever FAA's aviation safety and air traffic control components. The government-sponsored corporation model envisioned by Chairman Schuster and President Trump would reduce transparency and oversight while allowing for fee increases, diminished access to the national airspace for many aviation stakeholders. It would also represent an unprecedented giveaway of taxpayer-funded assets to an untested private entity. And it would threaten the progress we're making, threaten FAA's ongoing efforts to modernize air traffic operations under NextGen. That process has accelerated in recent years, delivering billions in savings to airlines and customers. So the budget request not only unrealistically assumes a quick transition to a private ATC entity, it also defers capital investments in FAA's air traffic control infrastructure for the upcoming fiscal year. That seems to be directly at odds with the notion of improving ATC operations.
I'm very skeptical, I have to say with all due respect, about the plan that has been advanced that would provide for so-called reform in a system that has seen no fatality on a commercial plane since 2009. I am puzzled that the administration wants to break apart the FAA and put the critical safety oversight role, air traffic control, into the hands of an unknown, untested entity that, in effect, will be controlled by the airlines, particularly since nearly 40,000 people are expected to die on our roads every year, and the administration has yet to propose a specific set of measures to build new roads, rails, bridges, and other infrastructure. In fact, during the campaign, President Trump promised to replace our, quote, obsolete, end quote, rails and tunnels with the, quote, gleaming, end quote, infrastructure our country deserves. So I am wondering why the priority on breaking apart the FAA when we have yet to see any specifics. In fact, a cut in the investment on infrastructure in the 2017 budget. I wonder if you could explain what the impacts will be of the cuts that are contemplated, for example, in the Tiger program and other programs within the jurisdiction of your department.
The separation of FAA air traffic control from the FAA regulatory safety aspect is a cornerstone of the infrastructure project proposal. The current budget of 2018 does not reflect the priorities of the new infrastructure proposal. So the projects that were cut in the 2018 budget, in fact, will be realigned to newer priorities in the infrastructure proposal. Let me also say that—
Are you saying that Tiger will be fully funded and Amtrak will be fully funded, in fact, increased in funding?
It will be a different kind of funding. As was announced, the infrastructure proposal is going to be $1 trillion over 10 years. It will have $200 billion of direct federal funding, which is far higher than the past highway bill of December 2015. And it will be leveraged and to the $1 trillion through public-private partnerships and sale of possible sale of government assets.
And when will we see the specifics?
Hopefully soon. We came out with principles, and so we hope to have the legislative language, depending on the congressional schedule, probably third quarter of this year.
My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Moran.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Madam Secretary, thank you for your presence today. I appreciate Senator Blumenthal recollecting the efforts to make certain the contract tower program was funded. That occurred back in 2013. I would remain skeptical, Madam Secretary, you indicating that rural America and particularly contract tower programs would be more secure with privatization of air traffic control and a board of 13 people. Based upon my experience in dealing with this issue in the Senate, as I recall, to restore the funding for that contract tower program, there were 26 Democrats and 25 Republicans who joined together in offering legislation, an amendment on the Senate floor. So a majority of the Senate, in fact, a majority of both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate, put the efforts together to make sure contract towers were supported.
Yes.
And I would put that, I would put the risk of the survival of contract towers in the hands of Congress much more easily than I would put in the hands of a board of 13 people making decisions nationwide. I think one of the problems with privatization is the removal of Congress from having a role to play, and particularly and by rural, what I think I mean by that is almost any place except for the largest cities in our country is rural. And so I would put my eggs in the basket of asking Congress to be supportive of rural programs much more readily than I would put my eggs in the basket of a 13-member private board. I want to comment on your statement about a longer, to Senator Fisher's question, a longer reauthorization is a good thing. Boy, I share that view, and I was very disappointed that we were unable in this committee to ultimately get a long-term FAA reauthorization bill passed through the Congress last time. But the reason we were unable to do that is this topic that now is in front of us again, privatization of the FAA. And so, Madam Secretary, if it becomes clear that the votes are not present in this committee or in the United States Senate, will then you help us pass an FAA long-term reauthorization without the privatization provisions?
I wish I can answer that question, but as you all know, I cannot, without consultation from the administration and the White House.
Perhaps I'm only making a point, and perhaps it was a rhetorical question, but the issue that now faces us is the same one that faced us the last time. And in fact, with the administration's support of this concept, the chances of getting a long-term FAA reauthorization, in my view, have now been diminished. So at some point in time, the decision needs to be made by you and others in the administration. Is our priority a long-term FAA reauthorization, or is it privatization of air traffic control? Because those two things may be mutually exclusive.